Package Watch by Willis Vandevanter.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for having me. Super fun today. This was a fun project for me, although I feel my bug's a little bit lame compared to a couple of these, definitely. I chose the Amazon Cloud Cam to hack on, and I was pretty specific about choosing it. If you're not familiar, the Cloud Cam, this is it right here, was a Wi-Fi enabled security camera. And you would buy the hardware, you would pay a monthly fee, and then you could access the feed from your phone. So it was all like network based, or excuse me, like internet based, not any sort of local network camera. It was discontinued in 2021. And I think at that point, Amazon bought Blink, so you could like swap it out for like a Blink camera. And this was just to the junkyard, like it was to be thrown away. But what I found really interesting about this project for me was that after the cloud component was disabled, so I wasn't a customer, I just bought one of these on eBay. I actually bought 5 of them on eBay. And they're like $10 each. But after the cloud component was disabled, the camera was no longer operational. So from like a reverse engineering hacking perspective, you could have the hardware, you could plug it in, it would turn on. You could have the mobile app, but there was no server. There's no server infrastructure whatsoever. So there's just this big black box around the server. So the goal kind of came to be like, what if we try and like recreate the server side such that the camera and the app could communicate? And that was really the goal. At first, I started out in the hardware, I took apart a couple of the devices, and I can come back to that at the end if there's any questions. But what I ended up landing on was a software-based bug. So took apart the mobile application, stepped through it with Frida. You can find it on APK Mirror. It's not in Play Store or anything anymore. But you can find it on APK Mirror. Now it's having okay success, but again, there's nothing there for the server infrastructure. So what I ended up doing, and this is again kind of a first, was I just took all of the mobile code and I just kept feeding it to an LLM and saying, all right, here's the client side. What do you think the server side might look like if you were imagining it? And so it basically just working together, built out a pretty large server to simulate or emulate what used to be the cloud infrastructure or the cloud API gateway that's just basically no longer there. The bug I ended up submitting was I found that you can take any of these devices, if you plug them in within 2 to 3 minutes because of the EOL state, they fall into a pairing state. And then I know this is super impossible to read up here, but this will be the demo. And then you hook Frida into the mobile application. There's a couple bypasses with cert pinning. And then it's sort of the process begins where it starts communicating with this fake server that we created and doing like paywall bypass. So it'll be like, hey, what's this guy's subscription? Oh, he's got everything. Like, go ahead and let him set up a camera. And in the end, you can basically add in a camera that was no longer useful to any sort of Wi-Fi network and begin to play around with it. So how's that? I'm going to try the demo here. Hopefully everything works out. So here's the Frida script over here. You can't see it on the camera, but I have the mobile application running on this laptop. It's an Android laptop, or x86 Bliss OS. We're going to hook into this. So we're attached in. On the other screen here, but this is the server that's running. And so as it'll start to authenticate, it will begin to communicate with this server and begin to make requests. So I'm going to authenticate, and the app's kind of flaky, so let me take a couple tries. All right. So that's the first bypass. Basically, you've authenticated, you have a subscription now, and I'm actually going to take one of these cameras, and hopefully we can hop it onto the Wi-Fi network, and now you can communicate with the camera, essentially. So on the Android side, basically it's asking, hey, I see a camera that's in pairing mode, because remember, it drops into pairing mode. It does this like little blue-green flashing thing. It does that. So connect to the camera. The Bluetooth's kind of garbage on this laptop, so I'm going to bring it back close. So I don't know, I can turn this around and you can see it, but it's basically to the step now where it's paired to the camera. So we're going to go ahead and push the Wi-Fi to the device as if this was a real working device anymore. And there were some interesting parts too. I can come back to it, but like there's a private key exchange that somehow the LLM figured out a little bit, because I was generating private keys that could actually be used for communication. So I'm going to hop this onto a mobile network, onto a Wi-Fi network, and we can begin to record traffic from the device. There we go. So it's pushing over the Wi-Fi connection over Bluetooth, and then registering my device to what's on the right, which is this fake server that I have running on my laptop. I should also mention for the setup, the whole thing is over Tailscale. So this is running off my phone, and there's a tailnet set up with split DNS. See this host, really hard to see, but pipes.dns, that was the host that used to be the Amazon server. So every time any device in this network makes a request for that host, the split DNS says, oh yeah, absolutely, it's this host on the right there now. So it's intercepting traffic and registering my device. You can see this on the right here. It's registering the device through the network. And if we're lucky, should already, there we go.
Works.
Yeah. So this is the Wi-Fi network that the camera's on. It's actually communicating with the Wi-Fi network. It's going out to existing Amazon infrastructure along with, you can't see it, but the Poison DNS, the DNS split host to communicate with my system. So setup complete for the camera. So now the camera is actually set into the network. We can communicate with it, access it. And there's a really interesting piece, and I'd hope to have this ready. It doesn't work, unfortunately, but I'll show it for a second, which it begins to set up the video streaming process. So it actually starts to make the connection. So on the left and right, we'll see a whole bunch of text go down where it's actually trying to negotiate WebRTC as part of it. So you can see up here, it's actually, so I have Canary, that's one of the ways I know that it's actually working. And on my WebRTC server, right, you can see it started to negotiate WebRTC, try and figure out video and audio. It's not stable, it doesn't work, it's kind of disappointing on that side of it, but the rest of it was super exciting. So I had fun with the project, I absolutely loved it. It's come a long way. From the, yeah, so from the hardware side, can't talk too much about this because none of that's been disclosed yet, but there are definitely some interesting things in here. I would call out, if you want a fun hardware project, these are $10 on eBay. There's plenty of them. You can buy them in lots of 5, 7. It has a MediaTek CPU that's from about 2015. It has a black backfill epoxy, which makes it a little difficult to remove. The chip just to the right is the NAND chip. It's a 153 ball grid array. It as well has a bit less of epoxy, but it can come off slowly. After the firmware is on there, and you can pull off the firmware and begin looking at it from other like Bluetooth-based attacks. There are pads that host UART as well as the fastboot Ethernet if you want to modify some of the environmental variables to play with the camera more. So that's all I had, guys. That's the end of my project.
Very nice. And I love that. That camera just says, I'm spying on you. That's what when I look at.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
One question quick. Just super curious about the LLM bit. Like, it's sort of like, oh yeah, I just, and then move into exploitation. Can you tell us a bit more about that? Just feeding, actually creating ultimately like an exploitation backend, but doing that almost hands-free. It sounds like using something like, how'd you do it? What'd you use?
Yeah, I used Anthropic for most of it. ChatGPT wasn't so hot with it, but most of it was taking the decompiled application and picking out certain parts where I was confused, like what exactly is the server going to expect here? Well, again, what's really nice about Java is it's strongly typed. So it knows exactly what's going in the request and expected in the response. So the LLM was like really good at understanding what it should be sending like in a JSON blob backwards, and just was just great at it. So it wasn't perfect. Like, as you know, like the context window is not that large within Anthropic. So you kind of have to pick and choose, at least for me, I had to pick and choose what I wanted to get out of it from the LLM process. But
yeah, but that is pretty awesome. Like mocking out an entire server side with no server code.
Right. That's what made it so fun. The guardrails around this, like the end of life thing. I was like, this is sweet. Like, try out something new. So, thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions? All right. Thank you. And that is the final presentation of Junkyard. Thank you, everybody, for coming out, checking out these bugs that will live forever in end-of-life software. As I mentioned, we're going to be tallying the scores here, and then we're going to announce the winners on the main stage. So thanks for attending. Thank you again to the judges. Let's give everybody a round of applause.